Welcome to the Magical Salon, where two regular people, Amanda and James, explore mystical ideas and big questions. From books to pop culture, if it's a doorway to something deeper, we're probably into it. We're not experts, and maybe you aren't either, but that's kind of the point. Hi, welcome back. Are you awake or dreaming? Maybe it doesn't matter. This episode of the Magical Salon is all about dreams. What are they? What could they be? Are they the mind's rest or a powerful spiritual access point? Can it be both? So I guess to start us off here, what are dreams? I'll leave that to you.
Well, first of all, I'm your resident dream warrior today. I don't know what you are.
I forgot about that. I guess I'm just your dreamless sleeper.
Or you could be a dreamer. I mean, you may say I'm a dreamer.
All right, I'll be John Lennon.
But I'm not the only one. Well, yeah, and I'm a dream warrior, which is a Dawkins song. So we're both musically based this week, I guess.
A what song?
Dawkins. It's a band from probably the 80s. I don't know. It's fine. So what are dreams? I mean, at a very base level, from a science-y perspective, which, you know, we're very big on the science. We dream when we enter REM sleep, REM, which is like rapid eye movement. And that's where you're in the deepest sleep of the night usually. Oddly, your body is paralyzed at this point when you are sleeping. However, your mind is still active, but different parts of the mind are active. So your prefrontal cortex, which typically controls things like logic, reason, kind of your rational thinking mind, is suppressed. So you're not thinking as much of logic or self-criticism, and you're not even really considering reality. Things will happen in dreams that are absurd when you wake up, but because certain sections of your brain that are normally operating just are not functioning, or they're at a very inactive state. So then on the flip side, there are other elements of your brain that are more active when you're sleeping. For instance, your visual cortex, your eyes are twitching around rapidly. That's why rapid eye movement. So when you're sleeping, your mind is producing all these images. Your visual cortex is working overtime. Then you also have your limbic and I think it's called the amygdala working as well at a higher rate than usual. And those kind of control your emotions. So that's why dreams can be they are very emotional when I do remember them sometimes. And then lastly, your memory is also being kind of triggered. So you're remembering things from when you were 5, even though you haven't thought about it in 20 years or 40 years. That's where dreams kind of blur. History, timelines, linear thinking doesn't really exist in the dream state. And because your rational mind is quiet, you're not able to go, wait a second, I haven't been in elementary school in 30 years. Like, why am I dreaming about this? Obviously, this is a dream. But that's kind of how your body gets tricked, or your mind, your conscious mind is tricked in a dream state. So I know that was a lot, but just wanted to at least set down some of the mechanics of what happens.
Yes, thank you for setting down that science for us. On a non-scientific note, some people believe that dreams are portals to different dimensions or to parallel realities, or that through dreams you can astral travel, which I'm not super familiar with that. But a couple other things. In ancient Egypt, they believed that dreams were divine messages and you could receive them through dreams. And across indigenous cultures and traditions, there's also this idea that you can be imparted guidance through dreams and that you have to be ready to receive it and also know that you've received it. So there's kind of a dual component there.
I was seeing some of that as well, and it's specifically called oniromancy, I believe, which is essentially dream divination. So that was what was practiced in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt and all these different cultures and societies. I kind of wonder, is that not sort of reminiscent of Jung or Freud? Because they were also big on psychoanalyzing dreams and what are those messages trying to convey? Like, I think from a Freud perspective and Jung, they would probably be saying you're tapping into the collective unconscious when you're sleeping and you're getting messages about how the world is emotionally feeling, specifically Jung, because he thought he was going crazy and having visions of red waves of blood, and then boom, that summer, was it World War I started maybe? So the point being, he viewed dreams as a way for deeper truths to emerge to the surface that in your rational mind you kind of don't consider.
Yeah, because I was looking up like the different types of dreams, and two of the ones that just sort of instantly stuck with me were what was called symbolic dreams, which just means that there's a lot of symbolism chock full in the dream itself, and then prophetic dreams, which is sort of what I would describe Jung's dreams as. You are getting like some kind of a message from the future. But what I also think is interesting in terms of Jung, in terms of also the symbolic dreams, there's sort of like a difference between personal symbolism and universal symbolism. And in terms of dreams, that's partly why, like, oh, what does this type of dream mean? Or dream dictionaries often fall flat and are kind of unsatisfying. At least I've always found them unsatisfying, because I think that there's only so much you can rely on universal symbology or symbolism. Symbology. I'm like that guy from Da Vinci Code. There's only so much you can rely on universal symbology. At the end of the day, I think you have to figure out what it is that your dream means, because the message, if you believe like in messages, it's going to be relayed to each person differently in the way that they're best going to receive it, I think.
Well, getting to the symbols, it kind of just, to me, is reminiscent of the fact that the world has gotten so interconnected now that some of these dream dictionaries or whatever, we can look up, oh, a squirrel appeared in my dream. What does that mean? You'll get some type of cultural reference. Oh, in this part of the world, the squirrel represents storing for winter or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily relate to you in the modern world anymore. So I think that's part of where the symbols at one point in time might have had a common interpretation in a given society. But I don't really, to your point, I agree. You can't just kind of broad stroke paintbrush every time a scale appears in a dream, it's about justice, or an eagle is war or peace if it's a dove. I think you can get a little bit, I just don't know if you really need to read somebody else's interpretation. I agree, it should be a more personal interpretation, which goes to the question for you. Do you dream personally? Because every person dreams every night. They know this, but most people do not remember their dreams.
I mean, I remember my dreams sometimes. I've never really been one for keeping a dream journal, because even by the time, right when I wake up and I'm trying to write it down, I'm already grasping at straws. So it's kind of impossible for me to ever capture the dream. And so I don't really try, but I do dream. I don't know if I would say I dream every night. What about you?
I would say I'm in a similar boat where if I'm being good with my practice of trying to remember the dream, it's kind of a conscious effort. You have to, before going to sleep, okay, I'm going to remember my dreams. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to think of my dream right away. Instead of my alarms going off, I'm going to flip over and then read the news or watch the sports highlights from yesterday. I think that's one of the reasons dreaming is so hard to remember, because like we mentioned, it's messing with your memory when you're in the dream. That's why timelines don't really make sense and stuff. So then when you wake up, you're also kind of disoriented because you're going from wherever you are, the astral plane, and now you're like, oh man, I have to go to work, or I have to make my breakfast, I have to shower. You have to do all these things that just kind of come flooding in to the real world when you wake up, that you kind of just lose the dream because things are kind of more pressing.
And that's after you've already lived a life in this alternate reality, which is also a dream. It reminds me of that quote that we mentioned in one of the prior episodes about the man is he dreaming that he's a butterfly, or dreaming that he's a man, or something to that extent, or a butterfly dreaming of being a man? Anyway, you can confirm the quote for us. But the point is that dreams feel so real that it's kind of hard not to find something in them that is real or true. Because a lot of people just sort of are like, oh, well, dreams, my brain's just resting. It just comes up with crazy things. It just does what it is. It just does what it does. But I feel like it can't be meaningless in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's kind of a lot of debate. Like, what is the purpose of dreaming? And the other thing that's funny is humans, I mean, we're not unique in that we are the only people that dream or only animals that dream. Because think of dogs, they definitely dream when you see them laying there and whining or running or trying to do random stuff in their dream. They're clearly having a dream, and it's a restless dream sometimes or whatever, just like humans. So it's interesting because it's not a human specific thing. But I will say the different part for me in conceptualizing it is that dreams, I think humans are different than animals though, because like while humans and animals dream, humans wake up and have a dream in their lives as an idea. So kind of it moving out of the sleeping dream, but into, oh, I have a dream to become a CFO one day. I have a dream to play in the NFL. People have this underlying drive that's very forward thinking, very grandiose in some place. Kind of, again, John Lennon, you may say I'm a dreamer, but there's something to it where, no offense to dogs or birds, I don't really think they're dreaming of being a better bird or...
But I think that because they don't dream of that, they actually are a better bird. In some ways, I feel like dreams can be rather destructive. You know, there is one of my favorite quotes at the end of Ben Okri's The Famished Road is, "A dream can be the highest point of a life," which I really like that quote because for me, it just sort of represents how having that drive to attain something and having it just out of reach in some ways is the excitement. It is the embracing of the journey. But once you get there, it's not really ever as satisfying as it seems like it will be from the outside, if that makes sense. But I guess like in terms of our dogs, like we've always talked about how like one of our dogs, Rosie, is just very good at wu-weiing and being like very spiritually in tune. It's like she just runs from one thing to the other, whereas our other dog is way more high strung.
So what does that have to do with dreams? So it's good that it's not good to have dreams, or it is? I think I'm kind of missing the point there.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of saying both things. I guess what I'm saying though is like most dreams that people have are external things and you don't ever really need to do anything other than be, as we've talked about on prior episodes. So yes, humans always come up with these lofty goals. Oh, I want to run a Fortune 500 company. I want to be a really great author, whatever the case is. But dogs and birds, for example, don't have those aspirations. They're just happy being where they are, which I think people could take advice from.
Interesting. So don't dream. I like that.
Listen to the birds.
Don't dream. Don't strive for greater. Be content with what you have, which is kind of a teaching in spiritual circles and stuff. One other thing that I think is interesting is kind of the idea you were mentioning earlier of where do you go, which I think is a big question because some people are like, oh, I'm in the astral realm or whatever you were kind of describing. And I think the astral plane, because you'll hear of, oh, I'm trying to become an astral traveler, get out of my body. And there's a lot of interesting things around that. Like the Monroe Institute is fairly famous and it was started by this guy, Robert Monroe, and he started having these weird experiences where he was leaving his body, he thought, at night. Essentially, his mind and consciousness were detaching from his body, and then he could go float around the universe and do all this crazy stuff. So he made this program in this technology where they play these two different frequencies, one in one ear and then one in another ear, that are very slightly different. And somehow by doing that, it's supposed to make your brain hemispheres, because you have the right and left, become in sync with each other. And then that is allowing you to get into a relaxed state and your brain waves are slower and then you can leave your body more easily. It's just interesting that people are intrigued in this and trying to get out of their bodies with science and technology. They're using kind of new inventions to kind of push the frontier of where you can go and what you can do in dreams beyond just, I'm just reliving this moment.
Have you heard of Tibetan dream yoga?
Can't say that I have.
I think you may find this interesting. So Tibetan dream yoga is a way of doing lucid dreaming with the goal of enlightenment. Basically, the idea is that you're supposed to learn how to manipulate elements of the dream so that you understand the illusory nature of reality. So in the dream, you might try and change the table that you're sitting at to a bed or something. It can even be something small, but if you manage to actually do it, because anytime I've ever lucid dreamed, I've never been able to actually make any change. I've only really lucid dreamed once, and it was just me realizing that I was lucid dreaming, and that was the extent of it.
Can you explain what lucid dreaming is for the listeners? I mean, they're probably familiar, but just for some background.
I mean, it's basically just when you know that you are dreaming, when you're still within the dream. And all these spiritual practices, they always say that you should try and get to the point of lucid dreaming, because I don't know really why, but they seem to always say that you should.
Do they? I'm not sure if I'm familiar with religion telling you to try and lucid dream. I don't know if that's...
I mean, all of these places, similar to this Tibetan dream yoga, a lot of spiritual practices say that you should treat sleeping as a ritual and that you should go into sleep like you would go into a temple, for example. Like, that's a quote of some kind. So you're preparing for it, by doing whatever you need to do to put your mind in the right headspace before you go into sleep, which most people don't really do that. They just kind of conk out on their bed or on the couch or whatever. So it's also just about being more mindful, I think. And then if you're more mindful all the time, then you're also going to be reaping the spiritual benefits.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting though, when you think of dreams from the context of, in popular culture, there's a lot of dream interpretation in movies, specifically Inception, the Christopher Nolan movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and a bunch of other people that are famous that I can't remember right now. It's the whole idea of like going with, if it's in your mind, the subconscious is talking. And I think there's something to be said for, is your sleep going to be better if every night you pray and then wash your face and then brush your teeth and then you just lay down, don't have your phone on, don't watch TV. You just do a ritual to prep yourself, to your point, versus, I was just watching a super violent horror movie. I just ate a whole pizza and crushed a 6-pack and I'm gonna go pass out on my couch, to your point. That type of sleep and dream is probably going to be quite a bit different just because of how you're priming yourself prior to going to sleep, which I think is interesting to consider because most people view sleep as a necessary evil. It's like, I have to go to sleep, or I want to stay up, but I know I should go to bed. And I'm kind of curious about where that kind of came. Are people always averse to sleep? Because then on the other hand, some people love sleep and it's like, I really wish I could have days off so I could just sleep for 12 hours a day or whatever.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a historian, but I think that a lot of people turn to sleep as a form of escapism when they're depressed. So I think that explains why some people feel the need to sleep for that long. But I also just sort of wonder, in terms of being averse to sleep, well, some people are insomniacs. I'm sort of an insomniac. At least I have periods where I cannot sleep.
One thing that came up to me as a point of potential discussion is the idea of dreams and sleep being a time, specifically as a child, full of wonder and weird mystical things can happen during sleep. So think of Santa Claus comes at night, you're sleeping, and then this mystical thing happens. The magical man comes down the chimney and gives you presents. Or the tooth fairy, I lost a tooth, and this magical being floats into the room and gives me money or takes my tooth and gives me whatever. The idea of magical things happening overnight when you're not conscious is kind of a interesting thought. But then also, did you ever read about or hear the tale of the Sandman? Basically the guy that goes around and puts sand in your eyes to make you sleepy. And then when you wake up, it's like, if you have I think it was probably eye boogers, but it would be, that's your sand from the Sandman. Did you not hear that?
No. What is that?
You didn't read the book about the Sandman?
Was that not Neil Gaiman?
No. I mean, he made a comic, but the Sandman as the archetype is there's a kind of a Santa Claus but for sleep. So the Sandman goes around and sprinkles sand onto you, and then you fall asleep when it hits you, and then they're responsible. It was essentially saying there was a god over sleep is kind of a way of thinking about it, which I do think Neil Gaiman kind of gets at in his version of it. There is the god of sleep. They control the realm that people go to all over. Again, kind of getting to it's a shared reality in some interpretations. Like we're all going to the same place when we dream and interacting in one giant collective hodgepodge. Something else that came up was the idea of dreams allowing creatives, artists, and inventors to make discoveries or inventions or connections. And I think that's really interesting because, as I mentioned, when you're in the dream state, your logical brain is not really functioning and you're really just kind of digging through memories. Time doesn't matter when events occurred. It's just mishmashing all of these different experiences together and also applying emotion to them. And so it kind of gets into this weird space where people can make very disparate connections. And then if they wake up and remember it, it'll come in the form of the dream. You'll hear of people solving problems. So there's a lot of discoveries that apparently came up where people had a dream or, oh, I thought of this in this dream. And then isn't that how I think Stephanie Meyers, the lady that wrote Twilight, I believe she had a dream. And then that's kind of what spurred her to write this trilogy or whatever that ended up becoming.
I don't think that's true. I believe that she was writing a fan fiction of 50 Shades of Grey. Which maybe the idea came to her to write a fan fiction in a dream, but I don't know that really counts because the greater influence would be 50 Shades of Grey in my mind. Or is it the other way around?
She had a very vivid dream of Bella and the vampire in a field or something falling in love, and it was like forbidden love. And then she wrote after waking. It doesn't matter. That's a horrible example. That's not a good invention or anything.
No, that's a great invention. Twilight, are you kidding? A cultural icon.
I mean, the Dmitri Mendeleev or whoever invented the periodic table of the elements, he had that come to him in a dream. Basically, he was like thinking of all these different elements because he was alive during the early to mid 1800s and they were discovering all these new elements like every other year practically. And he was like, how do we arrange these different elements? And then he had a dream where it was like, oh, you can arrange them by weight and all these different things. And then it happened in a dream. And then he woke up and drew the outline for the periodic table, which we still use and obviously is expanded since then. But that's just one example of something that is still used from a dream.
It's a pretty boring dream for that guy. Have there been any dreams that have stuck with you and why?
I'm not sure that I could say that definitively. What about yourself? Do you have any dreams that have stuck with you?
I was more thinking a little bit more broadly. So the only time I've managed a lucid dream was I was in my high school, and then I had this feeling where it was either like, oh, I'm not in high school anymore, or I shouldn't be here, or something to that effect, or it didn't look like my high school. It was me comparing in the dream to the reality that I knew, and then realizing that it was a dream, but then I didn't wake up right away, which was why it was interesting. I've also had dreams within dreams in terms of inception, which those are freaky, honestly, because you wake up in another dream and then you're really thrown for a loop. I've also had dreams where I felt pain. I don't know if you've ever had a dream like that.
Yeah, that is interesting because I'll have a dream. If I have pain, it's usually because I fell asleep on my arm or something in an odd way. And then in the dream, something will happen that hurts the arm. And then I'll wake up and be like, ow, my arm actually hurts. And then it's like, oh, I was sleeping on it weird. Or that's happened to me. Not because anything in the dream caused harm, but basically like my actual body is coming into the dream. So the dream is kind of incorporating my body's actual sensation into the dream in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely happened for me. Like when you really have to go to the bathroom and that's incorporated into your dream in some way. But in this particular instance, it wasn't my physical body interfering. It was someone was beating me up in the dream and I was experiencing pain and then I woke up. But it's not like any part of my body had fallen asleep. I was perfectly fine physically, but I still had the weird remnants of pain, if that makes sense. And you know those dreams where you sort of jolt awake because you're falling? That's weird too. It's why would your body do that?
I'm not sure, but I think One other element that's kind of interesting about dreams is the idea of waking up. And frequently you hear the phrase like, oh, they woke up, like they saw the picture, they were awakened, they essentially saw through the illusion. And that comes up a lot in old cultures, practices, the idea of Maya, you're living in an illusion. Nothing is real, so dreams are a kind of a way to recognize. So basically, a dream to your mind is just as real until you wake up and then you realize, okay, that wasn't real, but it could still affect you. I think we've touched on before, but the easy example that I think spouses fear is like, oh, I had a dream that my spouse was cheating on me and then I woke up and I was pissed at them or whatever. And then the spouse is like, well, what the heck? I didn't do anything. But it's like, well, your dream person did. And it ruins the person's emotions. I think the idea I'm trying to get across is that the dream world in some ways can show you insecurity, or it can show you elements that you maybe are aware of from an emotional perspective. You're insecure or jealous or whatever, but then at the same time you're too afraid to face it when you're in waking consciousness. So the dream can kind of present fears or deep-seated, almost like your shadow self, as a way for your subconscious to communicate with your rational mind, kind of removing the filter of your daily waking consciousness as like a sensor.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I also think that the way that dreams and dream logic is presented, it's not always a one-to-one comparison. So in that example, if you have a dream about your spouse cheating on you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you could have an insecurity about the relationship in some way that has nothing to do with the actual logistics of the dream, which I think is why dreams are interesting and why people like to study them so much. It's because you have to kind of look at it from all angles and also not look at it in terms of the actual events just happening, but like what could they mean beyond that? What feelings is it carrying and maybe revealing about yourself in some way, shape, or form?
I kind of like the idea of it being dreams are essentially pure emotion with no logic, which is kind of an interesting idea because you feel a bunch of insane things sometimes in dreams, which is why they can be pretty disturbing, because you'll wake up and be like, I just saw my whole family die. Like I lived a different life. I was working in some place I've never worked and whatever happened. And it's super real. And that's the other thing. Time doesn't function the same, just like linearity doesn't exist. Really, you can just go from completely disparate events. Nothing has to make sense, but it seems real and you're just being overwhelmed with emotion in some respect. And then you wake up and then it kind of feels like you had a bucket of cold water dumped on you, gasping like, where am I? And I think that's also weird because sometimes you do wake up and it's like, wake the dead, the phrase, where are you going when you're sleeping? Because sometimes people are passed out and they are having a bad dream, but you can't wake them, or they're talking in their dream, but it doesn't sound like gibberish. So then are they talking to someone in their dream? I don't know. It gets weird.
Well, and what I think is interesting is sometimes you'll talk in your dream and it'll make sense. Well, it'll make sense in the context of the dream, which may not actually make sense. But then what you would hear from outside the dream is gibberish, which is an interesting thought because which is true? Like both are true at the same time in some ways. I also think it's interesting because I feel like I read something about how every person you see in your dream is a person that you've seen in real life, which I think now could be also, oh, I saw them online or whatever, but it's like features of people, but you may not even, like you don't recognize them in the dream because they're not someone that you actually know. It's just somebody you've seen and then your brain remembers that, and then they're just a normal, everyday, random person in the dream that seems like someone you've never seen before, but you actually have.
I have also seen that, essentially saying every person that appears in your dream you have seen at one point in your life. Which is interesting when you consider the internet, because historically, yes, you would have had to physically seen every person that appears in the dream. But now you could know an actor better than your neighbors. So maybe you dream about these people you've never met and will never meet.
No, but I'm saying, I think when you dream about an actor, you would remember like, okay, I was dreaming about so-and-so. You know, in dreams, there's often just characters that are there and you don't know who they are. It's kind of like in real life when you go into Walmart or whatever, you know, you're there and you're the main character in your story, but then there's all these other people that are just there, but you're only sort of kind of aware of them because you're more fixated on yourself. And it's kind of like that in dreams too, but it's similar because you've seen all those people in the dream too. You're just not super aware of them.
We do have a weekly wisdom that we could discuss as well. So it's a funny one when you consider we've been talking about dreams as the act of dreaming associated with sleeping primarily, not really the idea of dreams as an aspirational goal. But the quote is from Harry Potter, the Sorcerer's Stone, or whatever the heck it's called. The first one. And it's from Albus Dumbledore. Quote is from Harry Potter: "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." And that's from Dumbledore. I can't remember. Maybe he was telling Harry. It was Harry, actually, because he basically found this magic mirror and it showed you your ideal life. So in this instance, he's sitting in front of this mirror every night and becoming infatuated with his parents because they're dead. But the mirror shows him his family. So he's kind of neglecting the real world for this dream scenario that he can never have. And he knows it's not possible, but he's kind of not living in the moment. He's living in these dreams. So Dumbledore's like, bro, you need to get away from this mirror. Stop dreaming and just enjoy the moment. Do you have any thoughts on that? I know you love Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling.
I don't believe in having thoughts about J.K. Rowling.
I don't know why you hate her so much.
You already know why.
She's a strong, independent woman. She was on food stamps. She's a starving artist that made it big.
That's not my problem with her.
You don't support women.
You're just I just feel like, did I like Harry Potter? Yes. But I just feel like it's different talking about it publicly and not mentioning.
So I think we're done then?
I think so. Close your eyes, drift away.
Yeah, let the sleep roll over you.
Maybe you'll drift closer to something you may need.